Last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as simple as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Hey everyone, welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body and the NASM Podcast Network. My name is Angie Miller. I am your host, and I'm so glad you joined me to talk about all things fitness, wellness, and emotional and mental health. So today our topic is emotional intelligence and the healing power of laughter. I love this episode because I have a secret dream of someday doing stand-up comedy, but don't tell anyone. So my guest, though, actually does do stand-up, and I think she's pretty fascinating. So her name is Stephanie Paul, and she is an executive coach, and we're going to kind of use Stephanie's unique background in comedy and coaching and acting, and have Stephanie share how strategic humor can actually deepen connection and boost motivation and create breakthrough moments. So I love that. I can't wait to hear what she has to say. Stephanie's also going to help you with practical techniques to use laughter where you can diffuse tension. I don't know about you, but I love it when people use laughter to diffuse tension, when it feels like everything's getting really heightened and then somebody says something and it just breaks the tension. She's also going to talk about how you can use it to build rapport and overcome mental blocks. So there is a link between emotional intelligence and humor, and it might very well be the missing link to your or in your wellness toolkit. So Stephanie, I'm going to bring you in and have you introduce yourself. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. And it's not a secret that you want to do stand-up anymore. You just told the world.
I know. I just, I feel like I have a lifetime of material, Stephanie. Like I have to pour it into something. So where are you coming to us from today?
I'm originally from New Zealand, but I live in Los Angeles, California right now.
Okay. My favorite vacation ever in my whole life was going to New Zealand. So we went for 2 weeks and traveled the North and the South Island, and I've decided that's where I want to live. So
Fantastic.
I know, I thought it was beautiful.
It
So
is.
Stephanie, you've moved from comedy stages to executive boardrooms, which I find in and of itself extremely fascinating. So what are some surprising connections that you have discovered in your work between emotional intelligence and humor?
I think the key component really is observation. To be super aware and super observant. As a certified emotional intelligence trainer, we look at 5 things. We look at self-awareness, the ability to recognize and understand your moods and emotions and their effect on other people. We look at self-regulation, the ability to control and redirect emotional impulse before acting upon them in a negative way. We look at social awareness, the ability to understand the emotional makeup of others and how your words and actions may affect them. We look at social regulation, the ability to influence the emotional clarity of others and manage relationships, and motivation. And in humor, especially with stand-up and things like that, you can just look at comedians like Jerry Seinfeld or George Carlin, Ellen DeGeneres. All their humor is very observational. The reason why we find that material funny is it's from real life experience. So to me, those things, observation and awareness is the key component to those things being very similar or having similarities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the observation and the awareness, it's kind of like the emotional intelligence piece that's what it's building on. Do you have self-awareness? Do you have awareness of how you impact a room, so to speak? Like when you walk in the room, what is the vibe? And are you picking up on what other people are putting down, if you will? And so that is huge in comedy, but also I'm thinking timing. And I know that that doesn't really, I don't know that that ties into emotional intelligence, but in a way, I think it does, because you kind of have to be aware enough to know when you're going to say something and to whom, don't you think?
Yeah, you do. And it's interesting. I came across an article not so long ago. It was in the Harvard Business Review, and it was a research study that had been done on about 5,000 people on self-awareness. And 98% of the people who answered the study believed that they were self-aware. And the actual research found that only about 10 to 15% of those 5,000 people were actually self-aware. So,
I love it.
that's why observation and awareness is kind of key, because it's the things that we see. Um, so I think self-awareness is important first before awareness of others. The more you are aware of yourself, the easier it is to sort of see likenesses or similarities in others. And that's essentially what we laugh at. 86% of what we laugh at has nothing to do with stand-up. It's literally commonalities in day-to-day life.
I couldn't agree more. I love that study. That made me laugh. We're all out there going, I'm self-aware. I'm self-aware. And then like 10% are actually picking up the vibe. That's kind of funny, actually. So, you know, I don't know. I bet you have lots of moments, but I'm just wondering if you have a moment when laughter completely transformed a challenging situation in your coaching practice. When you're working with like high level executives, where does laughter come in?
It's really going back to observation, believe it or not. You have to understand what somebody's baseline is. So if I spent a lot of time studying with human behavior experts, from FBI and military backgrounds and things like that. And, they talk about baseline. So if you don't know someone very well, it's very hard to know maybe what their right mood is or what their baseline mood is. So if you can sort of observe what somebody's baseline might be, then you can sort of gauge where maybe you can bring in appropriate humor or make something humorous. Like I said, the things that we laugh at are very sort of usually commonalities. I don't think of a specific challenging situation where things are difficult that I could key in on, because each situation is different and it's sort of automatic. I've got 12 years background in improv comedy, and also 10 years in stand-up, and then a couple of decades in acting, producing and writing and stuff like that. So for me, it's sort of innately built into me, but awareness is a key thing. One particular scenario that I can think of was where I was doing a training where a woman kind of really wanted to understand a component around laughter. And I'm a certified laughter yoga coach and leader, and I spent 4 years in the laughter yoga community. And I sort of really wanted to study the science behind it and the healing aspects of it, more than just stand-up comedy and making people laugh. And she asked me if, I could explain to her the physiology of what happens when we laugh. And I said to her, would you mind doing an exercise with me? And this is something that all trainers can do with everybody, as long as they're comfortable, touching their clients in appropriate ways. And I said, yeah, give me a minute of your time. Is it okay if I hug you? She said, yes, fine. And we had somebody else in the room time us for a minute. And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hug you and I'm going to laugh. And I want you to laugh with me as much as you possibly can. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel odd. You're going to feel completely silly, but just let go of all your inhibitions and just laugh with me. So before we did it, I said, I want you to close your eyes and just check in on how you feel. Are you tired somewhere? Is there any pain in your body or soreness? Anything like that. Just anything the way you physically feel or emotionally feel, or just your mind, body, soul type thing. And she checked in, and I said, okay, are you ready? And she's like, yeah. So we set the timer off and we started laughing, and we laughed for a minute while we held each other. We basically laid our heads on each other's shoulders. And then when we broke after a minute, I said to her, how do you feel? And she's like, oh my God, I feel euphoric. That was amazing. She's like, I just feel so energized and high. She goes, I feel high on good energy. And that's essentially what laughter does. When we laugh for a specific amount of time. And there's a chapter in my book, chapter 5. It's all about humor and laughter. And I'm thinking I'm going into your next question here as the medical side effects of laughter, but
I have to pause for a minute. That actually is fascinating, and I cannot wait to try that with somebody. And so I agree with what Stephanie said, like provided that there's a safe, I guess I could say permission to hug somebody and laugh. I can't wait to try that. What a cool exercise to just not just share a bond in a hug, but to share a bond in laughter. And I'm actually getting ready to go back and see my sisters in Iowa. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to try this on them. So, but you're right. You were jumping ahead to my next question. So I can't wait to dig in, because it's always said, we hear it all the time, that laughter is the best medicine. But what actually is happening in our brains and our bodies when we laugh?
I'm just going to go back and give you a touch point on that exercise. If the person is uncomfortable doing a hug, you could literally do it back to back instead. You would get the same effects almost if you stood back to back with somebody and your backs were touching. So you wouldn't necessarily have to hug, but as long as your heads are close to each other, you get the same effect. So, okay, yeah. Laughter being the best medicine. So we release, when we laugh, I'm going to share some chemicals. So emotions are just chemicals in our body. And so from a scientific perspective, we can change our emotions easily when we change our biology. We just need to shift our chemicals, and we can do that in many different ways. But when we laugh, we release 11 happiness, what I like to call happiness hormones, and I'm going to read them so I get the information correct, because I want to do it scientifically correct. So we release acetylcholine, which gives us alertness. It helps with our memory. It helps with sexual performance, appetite control, and it releases growth hormone. We release dopamine, which gives us feelings of bliss and pleasure, euphoric, appetite control, controlled motor movements, and focus. We release endocannabinoids, which is a long word. This is the bliss molecule, or researchers have isolated 85 cannabinoids from the cannabis plant. Each of those cannabinoids give you some kind of key to the system, but it alters our conscious state and perception in people. So it gives us a positive perception of others when we release that. As we laugh, we release endorphins, more elevating, more enhancing, euphoric. The more present, the happier you are. Endorphins are also natural painkillers. When I get work done on me, like on pressure points, that kind of to release them, I laugh as hard as I possibly can through that pain, and it actually stops it hurting as much. We release enkephalines, which restricts transmission of pain, reducing craving, reduces depression. We release GABA, which is gamma aminobutyric acid, found throughout the central nervous system, and promotes anti-stress, anti-anxiety, anti-panic, anti-pain, calmness, control, and focus. Hold on, we've got a few more to go. We release melatonin, rest and recuperation. We release norepinephrine. This makes you feel happy, alert, motivated, antidepressant. It's an appetite control also, and it's an energizer, and it gives us sexual arousal. We release oxytocin. It promotes sexual arousal, feelings of emotional attachment, desire to cuddle. We release phenolphthalein, feelings of bliss, involved in feelings of infatuation. If high levels of chocolate have this particular chemical in it. And we release serotonin, which promotes and improves sleep, improves self-esteem, relieves depression, diminishes cravings, prevents agitated depression and worrying. So that is why laughter is so good for us. And I can't say anything more than that. That's a lot. You get that when you laugh.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's all that burst of hormones. We'll just call them happiness hormones, right? It's all that burst of hormones, and it's everything from affecting everything from what I heard you say is appetite, sleep, you name it. And so laughter really is medically sound. And that is why it's not just why there are comedians, it's also why there are yoga laughter professionals and so many people who want to deep dive into the medicine of laughter. I think there's medicine of love, right? Love is medicine. I did an episode on that. We've done exercise as medicine. There's so many medicines out there that we maybe don't naturally talk about, but it's not just prescription medicine. Again, it's love, it's connection, it is sleep as medicine, it is laughter. So I think that's really important. And whether you can say those 10 hormones or not doesn't really matter. I think the key is that there's really evidence to support that it is medicine. So, you mentioned that we can stand back to back or we can hug somebody. What's another way that wellness or fitness professionals can use humor without compromising professional boundaries?
Well, they can check out a friend of mine, Merv Neal. He's Australia's leading, by the way, I'm from New Zealand, not Australian. But he's Australia's leading laughter healing expert. And he actually he worked with some musicians and some mathematicians and some scientists, and he developed the laughter quotient. And it's a laughter therapy tool to assist reducing symptoms of illness, where they specifically designed the quotient that enables people to change their laughter to help identify better methods of their personal healing. So where you can go to his website, if you just Google Merv Neal, laughter quotient, you'll find his website, and it pops up straight away. But the thing that I believe, and I always tell my clients, is you are the funniest person you know. People say to me, "Oh, I'm not that funny," or I can't make people laugh, and I'm like, rubbish. Because if you've got friends, family, or colleagues, there's not one person out there who hasn't at some time done something silly, made themselves laugh, made a friend or a colleague laugh, or just the perfect timing when you know someone and you say something at the right time because you know them so well. Going back to observation, awareness, emotional intelligence, understanding that baseline, human behavior and cues. We all know this innately. We have over 4,000 human behaviors. Some of them are micro expressions, and your limbic system reads them really, really well. We forget that our biology does so much stuff for us, because we're so caught up in our heads, with our neocortex, with logic and reason, that we forget that our biology is just so easy to move. Like if you're having a bad day and you get up and you go for a run, or you jump on your, rebounding trampoline in your office, it shifts your mood straight away. So I think when it comes to appropriately using humor, it depends on the situation and it depends on your client, but using that awareness and that observation of getting to know them well, and using commonalities I use the joke when somebody walks into the room, like everybody shows up for a meeting and there's 6 people and everybody somehow is all dressed in the same color, like blue. And then the last person to show up to the meeting comes in red. Automatically, everybody notices that observation. Oh my God, they're not. And somebody says, "Hey, didn't you get the memo?" And everybody laughs because they realize, oh, we're all dressed in blue, and they didn't. It's a simple joke, but it's an old one, and it works. So those little things, and just playing around with observational humor, and noticing something in the room that other people may have noticed. It's super obvious. You don't want to get like something tiny in the corner, but playing around with just pointing things out, is and getting people to laugh. You don't even have to really have a joke, because laughter yoga is not about having a joke. It's just laughing, because it's the most contagious behavior we have. So when you walk past a group of people laughing and you have no idea what they're laughing at, your mirror neurons fire off straight away in your brain. You'll automatically start smiling. You'll probably start giggling a little bit, like, what are they laughing at? You have no idea, but your biology takes over. So, I've actually had a situation, this was many years ago when I was in the laughter yoga community and I was getting certified and trained. And it was soon afterwards I was dating a guy and we had a disagreement over something. And I was like, okay, it's done, let it go. And he sort of was wallowing in his self-pity. And so I started laughing. And he's like, I'm not going to do that laughter yoga BS. And I just kept laughing. And within about 30 seconds, he couldn't resist. He started laughing. So you really don't need any jokes. You can just laugh and people will kind of laugh with you unless they're super resistant. And, it's that simple.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when someone's smiling, it's hard not to smile. It's just emotions are very contagious. And I agree, laughter is especially contagious. And Stephanie, I just want to reset for a minute. So, my name is Angie Miller, and this is Strong Mind, Strong Body. And I'm talking to Stephanie Paul. She is an executive coach, but she also is a deep dive into comedy and coaching and acting. And she's talking about emotional intelligence and the healing power of laughter and how we can use laughter in so many ways to build connection and to diffuse tension and also just to overcome some mental blocks. So, Stephanie, I was wondering, you've worked with executives and you've also worked with performers because you've been in acting. Um, what do you think? Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to pivot for a minute if you don't mind, Stephanie, because I have something that I think is kind of it's pretty powerful, and I think this really matters because this really strikes me. I think so many of us work with clients who struggle with anxiety and stress. I think that's just such a big one. Like that's kind of low hanging fruit. Isn't that the big thing that most of society sort of struggles with, if you will? So, what are kind of some specific techniques for using humor to break through barriers of anxiety and tension? Because if I'm super anxious and I feel a lot of stress, I love humor, but I also am self aware enough to know careful how you use it.
Mm.
Right? Like, don't overuse it. Read me a little bit. Don't try to make me laugh. I mean, I want it to be so organic that the next thing you know, I'm laughing, even if I'm crying at the same time. So, which often happens,
They're very
right?
close. They're very close. Laughter and tears are very close emotions, and I wouldn't be surprised if they come from the same part of the brain, to be honest. So yeah, it's a tough question per se because I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm just fascinated by it, and I read a lot of books on it. However, anxiety is about control. I've had in-depth conversations with my friends who are, have PhDs in psychology and things like that about this particular thing. But anxiety is about control. So when you learn to let go of control, or you work on letting go of control, it's easier to laugh, right? Because laughter is about letting go. It's the opposite of control. It's literally about releasing. Anxiety, when somebody has anxiety, to me, it's a lot like a phobia, right? There's a fear based there. It's the fear of not having control. It's the fear. And so the way our brains work is essentially we will get a limbic system hijack. So anxiety, you get your limbic system is hijacked. So if you think about the brain from the perspective of at the stem, where the neck joins the brain, the stem, the bottom of the brain is a reptilian brain. And then over the top of that is a mammalian brain, which is where the limbic system and the hippocampus and amygdala and those types of things are. And they are where a lot of our emotions are created, or our fight or flight, that type of thing. So that doesn't have logic. It doesn't have reason. It doesn't have language, that part of the brain. It's 100% instinctual. So the neocortex, which is where we have mindfulness and where we sort of bring in the meditation, where we can actually grow the gray matter there, and we can shrink the amygdala by using things like mindfulness and meditation, can really shut down that limbic system when that limbic system takes over and hijacks your brain through the pressure of anxiety and things like that. So meditation, breathing techniques, and laughter, essentially what a lot of scientists have done with the research around it, is something that we had before we had language. Laughter is something that we start doing around the age of 2 months, and they've studied babies around 2 months that don't have that are deaf, that are blind, and have a desensitized touch. They still start laughing at around 2 months of age. So it's built into our brains biologically, just like storytelling. We told stories by pointing things out and doing mime before we had language. So it's prehistoric. It's been around a long time. And my dentist, when I go to the dentist, his assistant goes, "Oh, we've got a hummer here." So I hate the dentist. I'm terrified of the dentist. So I hum. So I listen to opera and orchestral music in my earphones when I'm at the dentist to get over the drilling sound, and I hum to relax my vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is all through your body. As you all know, it's a very prominent nerve, and meditation, humming, and laughter relaxes your vagus nerve. So those are 3 techniques that you might want to help somebody with anxiety. But it's something that, like everything else, it has to be practiced, but those techniques really do help shut down that limbic hijacking system and bring in the neocortex, where we have the mindfulness and the logic and the reason, if that
Yeah.
helps answer that
No,
question.
that does help a lot. And I'm actually really glad you brought up the humming, because that is something that I use a lot in, the humming, the tapping, and all of
Mhm.
that. And so I think that there's different techniques. And I think really what you're saying is, yes, you can use humor, and yes, it can be very, very powerful, but there's also other techniques, and we can use humor with those techniques. And so, Stephanie, before we go, I have 2 questions for you. First of all, I want you to tell people, everybody listening, how they can get a hold of you. But also, I want to know, is there anything else about emotional intelligence and humor that you want to share before we go? And if not, that's awesome too. But then I'll just have them be able to reach out to you. So is there anything else that you think is you want to share a little truth bomb or humor bomb with us before you go?
I think one of the key things about human behavior, laughter is an innate healing thing, especially for leaders, any type of leaders, coaches, trainers, those type of people who are helping others or being in service of others. You really need to understand your values. Your values, whether you know them or not, truly depict your behavior. You also need to understand that our limbic system reads behavior really well. So if you're not congruent with your words and your actions and your behavior, the brain will go ding, ding, ding. Something's not right here. This person's fraudulent, and that's innately built into us. So that's something that's really key. And that positive attitude, like laughter gives us that positive attitude. And I talked before about biology. We can change our biology. We can change our chemicals. And that's the wonderful thing about having a neocortex, the logic and reason aspect of our brain, is we can put a pencil between our teeth. We can force our muscles into a smile and start releasing serotonin. And then we can maybe laugh at how stupid we look, by forcing a smile on our face. And then there we get those other chemicals. And then the next thing you know, oh my God, I'm in a completely different mood. I am biologically happy. So making the choice to become biologically happy when you work with other people automatically raises their energy, raises their mood, because of mirror neurons and the things going on in our biology. So making that choice to show up for other people in a really positive way with a really positive attitude, and not fake. You're not faking it. You've got to be in that great mood, and just laughing and enjoying life in general is one of the key things of great leadership.
Oh, I like that a lot. I'm glad that you shared that. And I do think that, to your point, if you force it on people, it can appear fraudulent. But I think that if we just work on our own inner selves, and
Mhm.
we come across as authentic and genuine, and we can take life not too seriously, that in and of itself, I feel like people read that and they go, okay, I love being around her because she has high energy and she has positive energy. And then it comes back. So,
Mhm.
Stephanie, in our last minute, could you tell everyone who's listening how they might get a hold of you? And
Yes, I forgot to share that. My website is stephaniepaulinc.com. You can, well, if you're listening, you can't see the image behind me, but it's my logo. I am on LinkedIn. I love people reaching out to me on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, just look for Stephanie Paul, and stephaniepaulinc.com. And I have Facebook and Instagram, but I'm not really there very often. LinkedIn is really my social media of choice. So yeah, reach out to me.
okay, awesome. I hope that people do, because I know that I will be reaching out to you. So thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our Strong Mind, Strong Body listeners. We appreciate you staying with us and being a part of our audience. We'll see you next week.